Welcome back, everyone. It's episode number 6 this week. I've got to go to Oklahoma City tomorrow for a couple days, and then I'm off to the Mid America Truck Show, Matt's over there in Louisville for the rest of the week. So, trying to get all my ducks in a row and get this episode out on time. This week on the podcast, I'm at home, and it's a little bit of an old home week here on the show. For interviews this week, in the red corner, standing at 6 foot 4 inches, trucking out of Renville County, Minnesota, we've got none other than my little brother, the little brother trucker himself, mile marker Mike. Also, we've got a second interview this week from a little closer to home, my current home, that is, my home for the last decade here in Buckeye, Arizona. I've got another set of brothers, Brad and Nick from Pureflow Solutions. We'll talk to them about their trucking pedigree and also some really interesting filtration products that they have to offer. Also, this week, we'll talk about the TCA conference that wrapped up this week in Phoenix. I'll share a couple of stories about one of my all-time favorite trucking characters, a relative of mine and mentor from the trucking industry, my Uncle Larry, founder and owner of Larry Chaffetz Trucking out of Redwood Falls, Minnesota. If you've been around this business a while, you might recognize that name, or at least those Mack trucks of his. I'll try to keep the main segment of the show short this week since we've got two interviews. Last week, I promised to settle the debate about the right way to truck. I think it'll save folks a lot of time typing on social media if I just settle it for everybody. So stay tuned. In the main segment, get your pens and your spiral bound notepads out because this is going to be life changing. So before we get this rig rolling, I'll say a quick word about this episode's sponsor. I'll kick off the jingle here and we'll get going with our pre-trip inspection. During the jingle, if you're not driving, it's a great time to go like, follow, subscribe, download and share the podcast with your friends. Get that seat adjusted, set the cruise, and let's knock out some miles. We got work to do. TrueTMS is a cloud-based transportation management system. Being in the cloud makes integrations faster and you're able to access the platform from anywhere. They specialize in liquid transportation with their product True Liquid. It has intuitive planning, on-demand reporting, and easy order creation, rating, and invoices, which turns tedious admin work into streamlined automated workflows. And TrueTMS doesn't just provide software. They provide a structured, hands-on approach to implementation. And TrueTMS ensures your team feels supported throughout the entire process. The folks at TrueTMS have decades of trucking and liquid experience, and they care about this industry. They don't just sell you a product, they're invested in your success. If you're a liquid hauler, visit their website, truetms.com, and of course, tell them Channel 19 sent you.
Paper breaker one time, can I get a radio check? Pretty quiet out here on Channel 19. Well, there's a plain white rapper taking pictures at the state line. Hit the jake brake quick, we ain't paying no fines. The driver swing into the interstate, body shop south at exit 5. Building trucking ain't the same as it was. We're the last of our kind.
It is tax season. And truckers, you know your math doesn't math very well, especially now since ELDs got into the picture. Some of us used to be able to do a little bit of math when it came to doing our recaps and understanding how many hours we had left. But since we've had ELDs for a while now, some of our math skills are rusty. So hire a professional to help you with your taxes. Tax Mommy Jackie has a CDL, and she's also licensed with the IRS to do people's taxes. She does my family's taxes, my business taxes. She understands trucking. She understands deductions and how to maximize all the advantages that the tax code will allow for your business and for your personal taxes. She's affordable. She meets you where you are when it comes to cost. She's not just in it to rack up a bunch of fees. She's a great person. So reach out to Tax Mommy Jackie and get your tax work done through her. You can reach her on social media, and also her phone number and contact information is on our website at channel19experience.com. If you're new to the show, that horn means it's time for the pre-trip inspection. And even if you're not new, pop your horn a couple times. The folks around you will appreciate it, and you can let them know that you're listening to Channel 19. Let's start off talking about the TCA conference last week here in Phoenix. I went over there a couple different times. These conferences are kind of like a family reunion of sorts for me. Most booths in the exhibit hall are either companies I've worked for or people who are in them. I've worked with them before, or there's plenty of companies that I've done business with as partners in the past. There's plenty of new widgets, new gadgets to check out, of course, new companies doing different things with technology and other services that they offer. Also, I get a chance to run into some former customers of mine from when I worked at the various vendors. So it's really awesome people all the way around the show. Lots of people with many years working in this business in one way or another. While you're there, there's also all kinds of sessions that you can attend discussing various topics from driver retention, market conditions, equipment, maintenance. They have evening activities and guest speakers. It's quite the spectacle of trucking fun. Definitely a different atmosphere from something like Matt's or the Walcott Jamboree, right? This is the TCA show or the Truckload Carriers Association or Truckload Carriers of America. I can't remember which. It's one of those two. I'm 99% sure. It's a pretty typical setup for the industry shows and the business to business conferences like that go on throughout the year. These conferences at TCA, ATA, lots of big fleets, big fleet executives, big vendors selling their various products and meeting with the various carrier executives and contacts. Not a lot of small trucking companies at shows like this one, but each one of these shows has its own little bit of different flair and also a different audience, whether that's tankers, safety, maintenance, technology. Each show brings in its own different audience and different vendors and different people from the trucking companies show up depending on what the topics are, whatever's pertinent to them. So it'll be fun to get a different crowd here later on this coming week at Matt's. And a little controversy got brewed up over this claim that I made to have never been to Matt's before. That claim was disputed, may or may not have physical evidence to support their claim, but we'll get to that later in the show when we talk to mile marker Mike. Speaking of family, I've made some references on previous episodes about my Uncle Larry. My uncle was Larry Chaffis. He passed away a few years back. He owned Larry Chaffis Trucking there in Redwood Falls on the east side of Highway 71 there, running north to south through town. He owned that business for a long time and he started it. I don't know what year he started it exactly, but I'm pretty sure his US DOT numbers in the five digits. And part of my growing up, I lived about a mile or so west of his house slash yard slash shops slash his whole world. That there was about an 80-acre piece of land there that was pretty much the Larry Chaffis universe. And I worked there a bunch as a kid. So this would have been early 90s. He was running his Mack trucks. He always ran Mack trucks. I don't know. It would probably have been debatable during those years if anyone knew more about R model Mack trucks than Larry did. He had lots of R models. He built them from the ground up with parts laying around the yard. I mean, he knew how all of it went together. And he did have a few newer models sprinkled in. It was always a shock to see one because you were like, wait, the 1990s just roll in the driveway? Like what somebody lost if it wasn't an R model Mac, especially a lot of dark blue ones. But yeah, he was a little slow to adopt change. We didn't have a lot of the newer models because they had different parts and if a part from an R model wouldn't go on it, it wasn't really his cup of tea. He had all flatbeds. Now, this was before curtain sides got invented. I'm not sure Larry would have bought into curtain sides anyways. A bit too modern for Larry, and soft. I've seen the term and the song going around this week, soft hands. I think Larry would have probably been on board with calling a curtain side flatbed or maybe a little bit of soft hands there. So no offense, little brother trucker and all you other curtain siders out there, but that just wasn't Larry's way. And so I grew up working over there with Larry. And so a lot of tarps, a lot of side kits. I spent a lot of time setting them up, tearing them down. Probably still have some slivers in parts of my bodies from all those old and disheveled side kit boards. Lots of rolling tarps. I'd go to work, pretty pristine condition. My mom was a good job of making sure I had clean clothes all the time. So I'd go over there, relatively clean pants, clean shirt, and by the time I walked out of there, I was covered head to toe, looked like a coal miner who got trapped in a cave-in for about a month. But it was a hell of a lot of fun. Larry was a tough guy. He didn't cut anybody any slack. Drivers, dispatchers, the other mechanics, Mike, the body guy, Sticks, the other mechanic, me. Like nobody had an easy time while we were there. Larry started in trucking, unloading trucks of coal with a shovel, and you could tell he was built like an anvil and as hard as granite. And he gave hell to anybody and everybody, and it was fun if it wasn't directed at you, but pretty much anybody within shouting distance, and he had a big voice. It could be your turn at any moment. One of the things, rural Minnesota, trucking company, flatbeds, Max. Larry was, and I didn't really understand it at the time. I didn't put two and two together. It wasn't in my purview to know, but Larry, he was pretty tight-fisted with his money. He paid what he could get away with paying sometimes. But the fun part about that, the exchange of that was it was quite the entertaining crew that he had driving for him. A lot of people just starting out in trucking. I mean, he would give people a shot, which at that pay you kind of had to. But he also had some of the misfit toys of the trucking industry as well, and local folks who were just, it was convenient to work there and park your truck down the street and work for Larry. He was an honest guy. From what I know about Larry, he was a pretty fair guy. He was tough, but he was fair. But he was also a little on the cheap side when it came to pay, I think. So we had some characters, needless to say. But as a kid, that was awesome because these characters, I mean, this is what makes this business so fun, right? And so as a kid, a teenager, there was hardly a PG story told in the shop. It was a great education. You never knew what you might find if you had to go do something on the inside of a truck or fix something. But entertainment was everywhere. And I learned a lot of things. My problem maybe my mom should cover her ears if I ever discuss them. He had mostly men drivers. He had a few women drivers, which was interesting in and of itself. And as a young kid, you don't get to interact with a lot of adult women in your life. I mean, unless they're a teacher at school. These were definitely not teachers at school. So yeah, you learned a few things from them as well. But working alongside Larry every day really had its moments. Almost nothing you could do would be just right. Like his set of standards were borderline unachievable. And he probably knew it too. I mean, I could screw up rolling a tire from shop to shop and not do it right if he was paying attention and thought long enough about it. And his temper could go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in an instant. One thing I'll never forget is that the end cap bolt on a Mac U joint is not a 9/16 wrench. He'd always ask for tools, but he would ask you when he was underneath the truck or somewhere. And so he would just ask you or tell you, like, I need a wrench for this. And you go, well, for what, Larry? I'm swapping out U-bolts. What the hell wrench do you think I mean? Like, okay. Um, anyway, so he'd be under there. I'd go run to the toolbox, of course, a Mac toolbox, grab open and box end wrench, bring it back, hand it down there. And then what I learned real quick was to back up very quickly. Because if it was the wrong size wrench, it was coming back out of there a whole lot faster than the speed at which I put it in. And so I've still got some scars and dents in my head over those mistakes. I may not have gotten a whole lot smarter in those years, but I did get faster on my feet and I learned to pay attention and I learned not to bring a 9/16 wrench when he was replacing a U joint. I miss Larry a lot. They were really great years. He was a great man. After I got into trucking on my own, it was different kinds of conversations with Larry. He gave me a lot of good advice. I never leased on to him. Figured that was probably in all of our benefit not to do that. But he cared. He cared about this business and he cared about me and he cared about the folks who worked for him. When he would come over to our house for dinner, a lot of times on Sunday, and he wasn't in the shop or inside of one of his drivers. He really warmed up and he cut jokes and it was like a whole other person. And but between those property lines, you better keep your head on a swivel. So we miss you, Larry, and thank you for all that you did for a lot of us. That's your pre-trip inspection. Let's push you in the buttons and get this rig rolling. I'm going to start calling this main segment of the show the money line. And I mean, we are a trucking business podcast, number 86 on the Apple News podcast charts. If you haven't checked those out lately, I happened to notice that and I clicked and did a control F to find if our name was on there. And sure enough, it was. So, number 86, we're moving up in the world, right behind news from the knitting and crochet community. So, for the folks who don't know, that's line three, the drive line of the logbook. That's the money line. So if you're looking at a logbook grid, top line or line one is off duty. That's when you're not doing anything related to work, trucking. Below that, you got line two, which is a sleeper berth. Line three, that's where we're at right now in the show, which is the drive line or the on duty driving line, AKA the money line, since this is where the money gets made. And then at the bottom, you've got line four, on duty, not driving, or for many of us, where we document all the ways our time gets wasted. In the old days, almost nothing went on line four. Not to say that we didn't get our time wasted, we just never logged anything there when we were on paper logs because it cost you drive time. So 15 minutes per day were required for a pre-trip inspection. I almost said an imaginary pre-trip inspection, but a legitimate pre-trip inspection takes 15 minutes. So that's what we logged, and that was it. So welcome to the Money Line. This week on the Money Line, we'll settle the contentious debate of the right/best way to do trucking. If you watch social media, you'll see all kinds of debates about the right way to do trucking, whether it's about footwear or where you wash your feet, what material your pants are made of, what holds your pants up, drawstring or belt, what kind of truck you drive, whether your shift lever has letters on it like an automatic or numbers on it like a manual. But I've got a solution, and my solution to this debate is really quite simple. Starting with number one, safety. And number one can at times be in conflict with number two on the list. So I'll just get number two out there in the open right now, which is number two is to be reasonably law abiding. And I think we all know a good deal of the time, safety and law abiding are in reasonable proximity to one another. But in other situations, they're not even really close. We're governed and regulated by the unknowing and inexperienced, so this is no surprise. And it's been like this for a long time. But back to number one, do everything that you do safely. We're way too big and heavy to not err on the side of safety first. Your safety's on the line every day, along with thousands of people around you. You put your life in other people's hands dozens, hundreds of times throughout the day, whether you're in the cab of the truck, outside the cab of the truck, and they put their lives in yours. So be safe. Lives are important. As we saw last week, lives are precious and fragile. And so for number two, when safety equals law abiding, be a law abiding within reason. I'm not advocating letter of the law behavior here, but be in the general direction of law abiding. And I won't go into all the ways on this episode where number one and number two don't align. That's a lot of podcast episodes to cover that ground, given the rules that we're given to deal with or that we have to deal with. And so this leads me to point number three. And this is the last part. I mean, you never imagined that it could be this simple, right? But it's also the most controversial, I think. Number three is whatever the hell makes you get out of the bunk and get back behind the steering wheel every day. Like this job is tough as hell. And we've all got our different reasons for doing it. And our reasons aren't the same, so believe it or not. If getting 10 miles per gallon with an Aerodyne truck and wheel covers and weird pieces of plastic mounted on your cab or under your trailer float your boat, do that. If a 300-inch stretch Pete with a coffin sleeper and lime green frame rails makes you get out of the bunk, do that. That's okay too. There was a guy posted on a different group in Facebook this week talking about he was showing off his truck and the polish job that he did on the rims. Then he mentioned that he was a company driver. And of course, you can guess the mixed results that came from that. Part of the crowd, I didn't do an analysis of the data, but part of the crowd scoffed at the idea. Like, what are you wasting your time for? It's not your equipment. Who cares? And on the flip side, and the side I happened to be on in that case was good on you for doing it. We can all respect someone who takes pride in their ride and puts in the effort to polish their rims and make it look good, regardless of who owns it. And so I sent a note of encouragement in the comments. And then so did a bunch of other people too. There's a variety of ways to get your kicks out of being a truck driver. And some days you need a kick to get out of the bunk and go do this thing again for another 11, 14 hours, 600 miles. And some days for you, it might be wearing flip flops. Some days it's wearing boots. I was in the bank this week here in town. I was talking to the banker and I heard a jingling sound and it caught me off. It's a strange sound to hear in a bank, especially nowadays when almost nobody has coins. It wasn't the jingle of coins in a pocket or somebody bringing in a bucket to them. And I'm an old trucker, right? So I can't resist finding a rattle and putting an end to it when I hear one. So I started scanning around the bank, half listening to what the banker was saying and trying to figure out where the jingling sounds come from. And then I spot the source, and it was a 20-something-year-old kid wearing spurs. Now, I didn't check outside for horses. There's some stores in my town that I think still have some hitching posts, but I didn't go outside. I didn't look for a horse. And yes, it's a rural area, so there's plenty of horses, horse farms, hobby farms, stables. We've got a rodeo arena nearby, but the likelihood of somebody at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday morning needing spurs for work is pretty low, even for us. Part of my initial instinct was to scoff. I'm old. It's what we do. Comes with the years to look for reasons to find a negative thing about something that I see. But then a second later, it warmed my heart. And who really cares why he was wearing them? For all I know, he lives in an apartment complex and works at the Dollar General warehouse down the road. But if it makes him happy, it makes him get up in the morning and have a little energy in his step and a little strut to his step, have at it, kid. And yes, we all have our internal standards of acceptable or not, but they're our own. And it would be nice if maybe some standards were raised in some respects, not just in trucking, in general. And there's probably some things most of us could even agree on. But there's also another reality to this. Part of what warmed my heart seeing that kid was it made me think about when I was a kid. And I was trucking when I was about his age. And you know what? Sometimes I wore flip-flops. Some days I wore them just because they made me happy, or my feet needed to see the sunlight, or my feet hurt and I really wasn't in the mood to put my work boots on again, or I was going in the truck stop to take a shower or coming from a shower. Now, a few times my dumbass about killed myself getting out of the truck with a flip flop and I got caught on the lip of the door and had to grab the handle. And good thing I was in my 20s and not my 40s because it probably would have ended in a hospital visit now and I wouldn't have been able to catch myself. I've eaten a few too many cheeseburgers since then and do a whole lot less physical labor. But I knew the risks when I put those flip flops on and didn't have any steel toe boots covering my feet. I didn't have my parking lot helmet on, but I made a choice and I can live with the consequences. Now, I probably oversold my plan just a bit to solve this problem once and for all. And that's kind of the point. These three things don't solve the problem because the problem necessarily isn't out in the world. It's in us. To cut each other some slack, don't assume why we know somebody's doing the thing that they're doing. And if we can do well together at points number one in particular, and number two when it makes sense, then maybe we can get to work on number three a little bit more. But in the meantime, encourage each other, live and let live a little, and for some of the things that really get on our nerves as truck drivers, I've got a solution coming. So I'll close with that. There's more to come. Got some ideas, and I think you're gonna like them. So that's a wrap for the money line this week. Let's get on to the interviews, starting with mile marker Mike. Then we'll talk to the guys over at Pureflow Solutions. Trans Carolina Permits is based out of North Carolina. The company's been in business since 1977. They've got a team with a ton of experience in all of our favorite part of trucking, which is the government. They provide a portfolio of services for the trucking industry, various applications and permits, FMCSA, Authority 2290s, IRP tags, DMV tags, trailer plates, state filings for your business, over-dimensional permits, not to mention they have a compliance program. They'll help you with clearinghouse setup and queries, IFTA and mileage reporting, so your state by state mileage, your fuel purchase tracking, and get that wrapped up into a nice little bundle for quarterly filings. They're a one stop shop for your trucking needs. You can find them on Facebook and LinkedIn, or check out their website, www.transcarolinapermits.com, or give them a call at 1 800 899 4870. All right, welcome back, everybody. We've got maybe the most special trucker guest I know on the show this week. He's got a couple nicknames: Little Brother Trucker, Mile Marker Mike. It's my little brother, Mike. You're joining the show. Welcome, little brother.
Hello, how are we doing?
Fantastic. It's weird. You had to wait till the sixth episode. I mean, that's kind of how you rank and things. Danger Dave got to go
Hey, no,
first.
that's on you, brother. That's on you. That tracked you though, right off the bat. Interstate Body Shop. That's at 42 nowadays in
Oh,
Hamilton.
see, I knew I could
I had
count
to do
on.
some research,
Had to
which is
go.
formally years ago. That's at 5, but
Right.
it's at 45. You're going east, turn south.
Yep. I
Don't
can't
ask me
believe
how
it's
I know.
closed. I can't believe it's closed. Seems like a business that could last. I mean, they made it through the pandemic. They managed to find something to keep the cash flow rolling during the lean years, but yeah, they're gone now. So
Yes,
there's
indeed.
another exit around there that I remember. I don't remember if it's that exit. I think it's maybe another exit or two east. Man, they had the best chicken wings back in the day. Guys would just pile in there and they'd give you like however many wings would fit on a normal dinner plate. It'd be like $8 and you just go to town.
That might be Tyler down at the Twitville little diner in there.
Yeah, you might be right. So, I mean, I got to ask you the standard questions, even though I know some of the answers. How'd you get your CDL and what was your first job? Were there any adventures in any of these early trucking jobs of yours?
Oh, there's many adventures. I kind of started out like you. I mean, we're 7 years apart, but I was helping, we call him the legend, our father. Dad would pay me $100 to change oil on his truck and grease it on the weekends. And, it was
Wait,
same
wait,
thing,
wait.
clean the windows, all that.
You got paid?
Oh boy. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I, I think I might need to go back and resettle these accounts because I remember a lot of greasing and a lot of window cleaning that didn't really pay. And $100, like $100, I might have gotten two for
Yeah,
the
no,
weekend.
I was on a payroll, and then he had a little pallet jockeying going on, so he had me rebuilding pallets, fixing pallets, and stuff like that. Just a bunch of oddball stuff. And then where we grew up, it's trucking and farming. I ended up working for a neighbor, kitty corner across the section. He owned a small trucking company, had probably 10 trucks, and he farmed, and that evolved into washing trucks and greasing and changing oil and changing tires and all that. Then it evolved, he needed a driver and for hauling peas and sweet corn and sugar beets. So the first summer in my high school era, he just put me in a straight truck and tab over 4070 with a 22-foot box, and I went hauling peas. Didn't even have a license. Had a driver's license, but I didn't have a Class B or CDL or nothing. So then it all went good because that's one of those deals. You've been around trucks my whole life at that point. But he still had a lot of learning to do. We got to a point because he was a full-blown trucking company and farm operation too. His wife had said, "We need some more information on you. That obviously we got you on the payroll, but we don't have nothing about trucking. We need a copy of your license and health card and stuff." Well, I don't have that. He just put me in the truck, and I've been driving. I mean, I all summer long. I don't know. What do you want me to tell you? And so then they shut me down and say, "You're going now. You're going to get your license." So I did, and then I drove truck for him. I did a lot of seed hauling and a lot of red beets, sugar beets, all that jazz. Then I decided to get away from him, and I started working for my neighbor. across the road. And that's where I started driving truck over the road and step deck and flatbed. And he taught me a lot. And there's another guy there. We'll call him Scary. He's another one that, hands down, he taught me everything I know. That's when we started having problems. We started having problems with logbooks, and I jackknifed one of his trucks and bent a couple of his bumpers because, I'm 21 years old. He gives me a 379 Pete and 48-foot step deck, and you're doing trucking. And I'm like, well, this is a little out of my comfort zone, but all right, we're going to send it. Well,
Yeah, the whole world's not built like Renville County, Minnesota, with nice
yeah,
square turns and big
yeah,
corners.
yeah. But Scary took me under his wing, even after I had my accidents and boo-boos. And my boss at the time, after a couple times, he does, okay, just quit being stupid. Just drive the truck. Yeah, and this is after a couple logbook violations. I got pulled into a stale in Indiana. I wrote the wrong line down, and they tried to give me a speeding ticket for doing 112 mile an hour, which I just didn't know what I was doing with the logbook yet. So there's that. And I had to explain that to her. Well, no, I lied. And then I got ticket for falsifying logs. I was there for a couple of years, and then it finally evolved into being an owner operator and going about that route.
What happened in the jackknife?
Oh, it was freezing rain in the Twin Cities. I was getting on an on-ramp, and between freezing rain and black ice, the truck let loose going around Cloverleaf, and we went over the side and a jackknife the step that went into the sleeper.
You were
Just
empty?
free deal. It was, nope, I was loaded,
Hmm.
and it was 15, 20 miles an hour, and it was slow motion.
Yeah, once it starts going, it's the outcome is out of your hands largely. At that point, you're just waiting to see how it turns out.
Wanted to teach me a lesson. He made me drive that truck for 6 months, so I had to
Hmm.
explain to everybody what I did. There was no taking it to the body shop the next week. It was, no,
Wear that badge around with you a while.
yep. And it was a beautiful truck. I felt horrible. It strips away at your pride, but life goes on.
You just tell him the last guy who drove it was an idiot.
That's right. Yep. But hands down, it was a good experience. I mean, there was things that weren't right or as far as paperwork and the logistics of me starting trucking, but we made it through. And yeah, I would like to say I'm a good truck driver to this day. You learn a lot from stuff like that. I mean, nobody's perfect in this industry.
Yeah, for sure.
And once you think you got it figured out, something will humble you. That's the weird part about this industry.
Yeah, and the other way to learn, and kind of part of the reason for us all going from talking about a podcast and laughing about all the funny stuff we'll talk about to actually doing a podcast is we learned a lot from hearing the stories, just like that one of mishaps or and one of them is it's okay to forgive yourself for goofy stuff. Whether you got your Danger
Yeah.
Dave burning a set of rubber off of a trailer because you didn't get out and know that you should check and try to answer the question, why the hell do I have to shift so fast this morning?
Yep. Yep.
This thing's
Yep.
really dropping RPMs quickly every time I let it out of gear.
Oh yeah.
To stuff like jackknifing one, or I'll never forget the cranking of 45,000 pounds of frozen potatoes because I didn't do a tug test on my fifth wheel and I dropped a trailer on the landing gear when it was about 10 below up in Plover, Wisconsin. And you stand out there and you do shifts cranking that thing back up and give it 30 good cranks in low gear and then go sit in your truck for 5 minutes and warm up and think about what you've done and then do that about 15 more times over the course of the next hour. you know, you,
Yeah.
you learn some lessons that way and you remember them. But, the reason for the podcast is to share some of them so maybe somebody can avoid repeating any of these at least once.
Right. Right. And that's the thing. Our home farm, you operate out of there, and when I was parked in there when I was younger, when I first owned my truck. One time I got distracted. I dollied off the trailer. I'm like, we're doing dolly off the trailer, and put the truck in the shop, start working on it. But I got sidetracked, decided to go into the shop and do something, and I trained the dollies and pulled the pin, and I heard a bang outside, and I looked out the shop door, and my truck's rolling away into the middle of the yard. I'm like, oh, that's what I forgot. My airlines are still hanging at the front of my trailer, and the truck's out in the middle of the yard. I'm like, that's not good.
Right.
Now we got more to fix. And then you learn that you need to have a 3-step process. You need to do it all or none.
Right.
I'll never forget that one.
And you realize it might be a good idea to have a spare set of airlines around.
Or at least some couplers.
Yeah.
Start piecing stuff back together when you're on the road and something stupid happens.
I will admit that, the sound of your glad hands hitting the back of your cab is, yeah, I think it's
Oh,
much
it's
worse when
painful.
you're sitting in the cab than when
Yep.
you're 50 yards away and you hear it. It's much different sound, probably a little bit different reaction.
It's a sound you'll never forget.
Oh yeah, once you've heard it once, you don't have to ask yourself, I wonder what that was the second time. Yeah, you just pray that you didn't break one,
Yeah.
crease the line so bad or something that now you're looking at your trailer not connected to your truck. You get to crank that up and you get to try to figure out how you're going to patch together an airline.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of that, you should ask Danger Dave, or maybe he I don't remember if he elaborated on the first time, but with these RGNs, he got to be very strategic about steps with unhooking the gooseneck. Dave told me a story one time. He pulled his airlines, the electrical tore out in the port of Baltimore, and he got it all put back together, but he was in a hurry. He wasn't paying attention, and he hooked the left and right turn signal up opposite. And when he left Baltimore, he had people yelling at him on the CB, like, "Hey, why are you doing right? But you're why are you signaling right, but you're going left, buddy?" You might want to call him out on that one. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a possibility.
Oh yeah. On the on the inside of the plug.
Oh, he had to rewire the inside of the plug?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the plug stays in the coupler in that set event, and then you'll literally pull the
Oh,
cords out right straight out of the plug.
I
Yeah.
never had that happen. It always came out eventually. I'm not saying I
Right.
won't admit to how many times I know that it comes out, but it was
Oh,
more
come
than
on. Give me a
once.
number. Give me a number.
I pro it's more than three. But the problem is the bastard's really stretched out, but even by the time it pops out. So now you got like this long, green, flaccid cable that wants to hang down to your drive shaft.
Yeah.
And then you got
Yeah.
to figure out what you're going to do. But I mean, it just gets dumber and dumber as you go.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and an airline's one thing, like that's cheap, but buying a new pigtail like that stings.
Yeah.
And the old
Yeah.
one's useless.
Yeah.
So we were talking the other day, and I've been, of course, around for part of your saga with these new engines and DEF. And we've got another guest on the show this week who's going to talk a little bit about their products and maybe how that might be a part of a solution that works better. But let's talk a little bit about your journey with DEF and DEF engines and then kind of what you're doing about it now to kind of mitigate some of the pain of the reality of these new engines that don't seem to want to last more than 500,000 miles no matter what you do.
Yep. It's a tough call with these new engines. I mean, I think it's 50-50. I think a lot of guys have good luck with them. And there's other guys that don't. Their biggest thing is if you got a truck that has to work where you're hauling heavy 80,000 pound loads all the time, that's the best for it because your engine temps are always up hot. They're up high, therefore your exhaust temp and everything, it makes the regen and the DEF process work a lot better. But the carbon buildup in the engine between the EGR, I mean, depending on Cummins, Detroit, what they all nowadays got EGR and the regen DPF DEF process. The biggest killer to these engines is the soot and the carbon buildup. Because I mean, it's to put it in perspective. It's that engine is, excuse my French, but it's eating its own shit all day with the carbon and the soot. So what I do, I've been running it. I got an additive, Pittsburgh Power Fieldborne Catalyst. It knocks the soot level. You add it to your diesel fuel. It's like 2 ounces to 100 gallons, and it's supposed to knock the soot down by 50%, or your soot levels. And I believe it works because it smoothens it out. The truck regens less, and you can just tell it runs better. And your fuel mileage comes up a little bit, and your DEF usage is down. You're talking probably to a 200-gallon fill. It uses about 3 gallons less of DEF. And you can tell, you can feel it in the truck that it runs cleaner and it's better. I had a truck to 300,000 miles and on it, and literally, knock on wood, I did find some wood grain here, but not a lick of trouble with the emissions and the engine.
Yeah, because you're early. Like your first truck that had the DEF system on it, that was that Kenworth, right?
Yeah.
And that's the one you went through 2 engines on.
Yeah. And we had a huge amount of emissions troubles. And this, we got to about 550,000 miles, and the DPF having all sorts of troubles already. I believe at 400,000, we took the DPF out. Why? I don't know. So then we decided to have the emissions leave the group chat, and then we couldn't keep it together. It was one head after another. It was either head gasket or the head. Find out the valves are seated on the second head, and it just evolved into a disaster. And the next owner that bought it, it finally broke the crankshaft.
But did you fully replace that engine one time?
Complete in-frame overhaul.
Okay. So same block.
Yeah, same block. But the next owner, and I know them, and the truck runs just fine now. They put a whole crate engine in it, and now it's just fine.
So there's a chance that thing was flawed all along.
Could very well been. Yeah.
Because you were having all kinds of problems too, right?
But now
D-rates all over
here's
the place and
oh yeah. Hauled it back out of Baltimore on RGN twice.
I think you're doing it wrong, driver. You're supposed to pull the RGN, not be on the RGN.
Yeah. My
Pays better when you
hauled it
pull
home
it.
once. Yeah, when emissions decide to leave the group chat, is it the tune? What is it? Is it the engine? Is it too much compression? I don't know. After the fact, after I got rid of the truck, there was Cummins reps at our local dealership in meetings that in any truck that's deleted, it's impossible nowadays with DEF because they build too much compression. It doesn't matter what kind of program you got with it. They build too much compression and it kills them. But what was crazy, the Pittsburgh Catalyst, the Fieldborne Catalyst, that when they pulled that engine apart the first time, when it had to get overhauled, which it was literally 30,000 miles after the emissions left the group chat, they said that is the cleanest engine they ever saw that they tore apart. And the only reason they had to tear it apart was because number 5 cylinder liner tipped.
Because yeah, of course, the whole delete debate has taken twists and turns. But I mean, when you're sitting there with the biggest, one of the biggest investments of your life, probably second biggest investment next to your house, and you're trying to figure out how to not go bankrupt with this machine because of something the government mandated, I mean, you're going to try what you're going to try to salvage the situation, right? Like it's not,
Right.
I mean, what are you supposed to do? I mean, there was no cash for clunkers program for DEF engines that you go turn it in and basically get your money back and get a new engine. So,
Right.
you're stuck you got poop and you got bread, you're making a poop sandwich. However,
Yep.
put relish, put cheese, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that led to all kinds of adventures too, right? Between the software and the dealer hooking up the update machines, right? I mean, there was no fun thing trying to manage, trying to get that engine to perform without the emission stuff on it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep. And yeah, it was just a racket, and I'll never do it again. But you gotta be smart with emission struts nowadays. I mean, no idling. However you do that, whether you have an APU or whatever it may be, or if you're old school and you rough it. But truck manufacturers should really think about it, because you can take a 99 truck, a 1999 Kenworth, whatever, with a Detroit or Cat in it. You can count on 900 to a million miles before you have to touch that engine, do anything real, open it up. Nowadays, trucks are twice the price, and you don't count on nothing after 500,000 on an emissions engine. And it's almost shameful, because it should not be that way. Because now,
Right.
in 1999, what was brand new 10 worth? 100,000.
Yep.
Same truck today is 200,000. 225, 250 if you go
Kenworth.
Kenworth Peterbilt route. Yep.
Right.
Yep. So it's sickening, the inflation of all of it. The life expectancy of the engine is not there anymore.
Yeah, thing costs twice as much. Well, I mean, just the engine, right? Like if you look at what it costs to replace an engine or do an in-frame overhaul on an engine in 1999 as compared to what you were paying to rebuild these engines in what year was that? Maybe 20 early teens, like 2014, 2015?
17.
Okay.
Yep.
But yeah, 17, 18 years later. And I mean, you were spending, I never had to overhaul one, but I mean, back in the 90s, but I gotta be thinking
Yeah,
it
it
was less than
was.
20,000 bucks.
Yeah, it was probably 10 to 15,000
Right.
at that time. Yeah.
But I mean,
And
when you were
back
getting
then,
it,
that's a lot of money too. I mean, but literally, as an owner operator, if you're going to be an owner operator, 500,000, it's out of warranty. If you're going to have new trucks and play the depreciation,
yeah,
you know,
ride the warranty and
that
get the,
that
yeah,
way. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like I don't know
And just
how,
run it. And yeah.
I mean, you and I've been looking at trucks and stuff lately. Buying a used truck has got to be like a gut-wrenching experience.
Oh, it's
You're buying
Russian roulette.
something. Yeah, I mean, you see some of them out there, 4, 5, 600,000, no engine work done. Like, like, I mean, 5 pulls of the trigger have already gone in the gun. You're the sixth player of Russian roulette here. Like, this
Yeah.
thing's going
Yeah.
off.
Yep. 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 And it's frustrating, because I don't know how you can be a salesman and sell them.
And who's financing it? You would think that the bankers would have figured this out and said, "Yeah, we're not like okay, we'll finance you because." I mean, let's not forget that 500,000 mile truck, let's say it's a Kenworth, like
Yeah.
a T680 or something. Like that's still a what, 70, $80,000 truck?
Yeah.
You're gonna with a potential $30,000 engine problem coming around the horizon? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, if somebody's just starting out and they're buying that truck and they're put in most of the cash they had for a down payment, okay, you dropped your 10, 20 grand into this thing, you got 60, 70,000 financed. Some banker gave you that money and you could be 3 months away from a $30,000 engine overhaul. Like you're
Yeah.
going under.
Yeah.
Everybody's screwed at this point. The banker's screwed. You're screwed along with them. Everybody's looking at each other going, what did we do? And there's no way out.
Right. Right.
So I don't know what these guys are doing, even financing these things. I mean, if it was my money, if I had $80,000 to lend out to somebody who wanted to buy that truck, I'd be like, yeah, you better have $20,000 down payment, and I want to see a bank balance of 30 grand to pay for this motor because I don't want to be even further upside down with you with
And
$100,000 loaned out against what's still a 70, $80,000 truck.
yeah, that's the biggest thing. If you go that route, you have to plan on the fact that you will be buying a motor, and on the bad side of it, have a
And
plan to have
yeah,
that motor bought when it does go down. But
Yeah, and like the financial
Because
pain that goes into it, right? Like you just said, you had to tote that thing back from Baltimore.
yeah,
And luckily, you've got friends with RGNs. Most people don't. Um,
yeah.
so,
We're
what are you going
lucky
to
enough to
do?
be we're at least to a company that does over-dimensional and RGN loads.
Right. They got the solution, and
Yeah.
Michael was a good backhaul customer there for a while.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you put that to it as well, which what if you don't have that option and you're from Minnesota and the engine shits the bed in Baltimore? Now what? You're gonna fly home and let somebody you don't know do that job for you? You're gonna pay to tow it home? Good luck with that cost.
Right. Right.
Like you're gonna be $8,000 into a tow bill before you even open the hood at the dealer of your
Yeah.
choice back home, right? And then not even including like all the downtime that it's gonna cost you. And then the surprises that they're gonna find, right? And, well, we're in here now, we might as well replace this and replace this. So the cost only goes up once that hood opens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you can't make money. You're pouring money out as fast as it can possibly come out of your wallet or your banker's wallet, and you're just getting deeper and deeper. It's really it's really nuts at how this has all changed so bad. Like look at any other technology that we have. Like what other technology went backwards so badly to basically cost twice as much and last half as long?
Right. Right.
If this was a reality in the automobile world, your car company would be bankrupt. Like people would be up in arms.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So now, like on the truck you bought, you've been using that Pittsburgh Power stuff the whole time.
Yeah. Since I bought it with 100,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
So last 200,000 miles. Yeah.
So if anybody knows anybody over at Pittsburgh Power and they want to contribute to a paid advertisement over here, we gave them the first one for free.
There it is.
No, I mean that's good,
Yeah.
right? I mean knocks the DEF cost down, get a little gain on the fuel mileage, and the big thing is get as much life as you can out of this engine because the cost per mile of an engine, you're talking basically a reasonable scenario is it costs you 10 cents a mile to run that engine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
500,000 miles, $50,000 engine.
Yeah.
That's wild. So yeah, if you can get to 650, 750, at 750, you're doing a lot
Right.
better. Um,
Right.
well, the question now is how far do you run one yourself before you trade it in?
I'd still 600,000 because I bought enough engine parts. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, there's no like
But
reward
it's
points or anything with the engine manufacturers. Otherwise, you'd have at least like a really shiny jacket or something for all the engines you bought.
yeah, yeah. I wish they would give you jackets. That'd be great.
You got to negotiate that when you buy. Like when I bought that 99 International, like I made them throw in. Navistar had a really awesome, like a Letterman style jacket. I wish I still had that jacket, but it was great. I made them throw one in. You know, bought $100,000 jacket and they threw in a truck for free. Well, all right, little brother trucker. I will let you go for tonight, but you'll be back. There's more stories. I know
Oh
they're in
boy.
there. Well, we should mention that we did have a little bit of controversy. I've been walking around for the last 20 some years thinking that I've never been to the Mid-American Truck Show, but then you scraped up some old memories and had to correct me and that I
Yeah,
actually have been.
yeah. You met us there you were there for a day. I mean, I was 13 and you were 22. But yeah, one of their stops on a family trip was Matt's, and then down to Nashville and Graceland and all that. It was a whole round trip, and we spent 3 days at Matt's. What year was that? We were talking about that the other day. That was
1999.
that was in '99. Yeah, Reba McEntire in Alabama. We're there. That was. I mean, Mom would probably be mad about it. She'll giggle about this, but Reba McEntire is the Legends celebrity crush. So you 1999 was the year for the legend to go to Matt's.
Yeah, I can't. I swear to God, like
Yeah, you
I'm
were
gonna need to see a
you
picture or
were
something
there
because
with
I
your
can't.
truck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I bought that in the fall of '98. It was a '99 model, and that would have been
yeah,
in March of '99. Well, when I bought that truck, because I mean, you 1999 or '98, I would have been 21 years old, 21 and a half or so, and I just went $100,000 in debt. And so I didn't come home for six
yeah,
months. I just drove.
yeah,
Like, we got to pay this thing off. Like, this is crazy. I'm $100,000 in debt. And
yeah.
so I just drove and drove and drove. So there's quite a few segments of those years that I probably don't remember as clearly as I should.
Oh yeah, right there with you.
Well, all right, little brother. I'll cut you loose for this week and we'll catch up again soon. We've got an episode coming up where we're going to talk a little about walking through the business side and the personal side process of changing companies or considering changing companies, kind of what the thought process is. Some of it's business and dollars and cents. Other parts of it is understanding yourself and what do you really want to be doing, what makes you get up in the morning and get in that driver's seat and keep doing it. So, um, we'll be talking to you again soon, and then we'll round up trucker spouses, and then all of our better halves come in, and we can let them take over the microphones and give
Oh,
their
now we're gonna be in
commentary.
trouble. Then we're really gonna be in trouble.
What's it like on the other side of this equation?
Yep.
All right, little brother, I will cut you loose.
Alrighty. You
Take
have a
care.
good
Love you.
night.
Bye.
Love you too. Bye.
Well, welcome. I guess it was Nick that I met at the
Yeah,
show.
yeah, that was me. Brad was looking at some horsepower parts, so so left me there to man the station. And thanks for having us on, man. Really cool what you got going on. So
Yeah, glad to do it. I mean, when I was walking around, we met over at the Diesel in the Desert Truck Show a couple weeks back over in Chandler, Arizona, and I was walking down the vendor rows and your equipment looked not exactly what I was expecting to see when I looked over, so I had to come check it out, and the more you talked about it, the more intrigued I got listening to it. I was a bit of a MPG hound back in my driving days. I was always tweaking something trying to get better fuel mileage. And so, yeah, hearing what your product does really got me interested. And then I sent over the information to my brother. He's interested. And so, anyway, maybe we can go back to the genesis of this for you guys. Like, how did you even get in the business where you're in the business that you're in?
yeah, so our dad, our grandpa, our great grandpa, they've all been in trucking. So growing up around diesel engines, it's just always been something we've been interested in and been heavily involved in. And just really through networking, knowing some of the right people and a lot of research, we came across a manufacturer in Germany who builds a half micron filter. And we've been able to work with him now for about a year and a half and got the exclusivity to sell in the US as well as in Canada and really started doing a lot of testing on fuel systems. As far as we know, we're the only ones in the world who have done half micron fuel systems on a moving truck, not just like a stationary fuel filtration system. So it took about a year of research and development. Our dad was kind of our test dummy with his trucking company. He was really good to work with on it. And after about that year, we calculated his savings and it was significant. And fuel is really what most our customers are interested in. But once they see how well the filters work, we're usually doing oil systems for them as well, extending their oil life. And there's a lot of benefits beyond fuel economy by filtering your fuel. And the same goes for, filtering your engine oil to such a fine level. And so that's a long answer to kind of how we got in it and what we do.
But yeah, I decided to marry up talking to you guys along with interviewing my brother specifically around, some of the adventures he's been down the last let's say 8, 9 years with these new engines and the DEF systems and I mean, he's been through multiple motors back in 2017. We went through deleting the DEF system, trying to get, I mean, he was underwater so bad in that truck after we bought the truck with one motor and then he's on the third motor less than a year later and just going, yeah, I mean, your regulations are nice, but like we got to stop blowing up motors here. Even that came with a whole other slew of problems as well, because the engines are manufactured in a way and it has challenges and people, You got to buy the program for the ECM to operate the truck without the DEF system, and then the dealers automatically update because they pull it in the shop and see that the DEF system's not up to date. So then they go overwrite the software that you just bought, and now nothing works because there's no DEF system, and all the sensors are going haywire because they're not there anymore for the software update you just put on it. So yeah, and a lot of it, especially now, it comes down to being able to treat the fuel some way, either right with some sort of additive or filter it in such a way that you can get what's being circulated back in through the fuel system out of that fuel and not going into your engine, right? Because these engines just don't last long.
Yeah. The issue with the new technology and the new motors really is just that the engineering behind them. I mean, they're excellent motors. Everything is much, much tighter. There's tighter tolerances in the block. There's way tighter tolerances in the head. And then the fuel rail pressures have just continued to increase.
Mhm.
So like, a 2007 Cat C15 is like at 20, maybe 26,000 pounds at the most. That's what it's pushing through the fuel rail. The new trucks are up to 40,000 pounds. And so the particles or the crap in the fuel that typically would not be getting pressurized and sent in now does. Which is why we really, we have an excellent entrance into the marketplace because of how finicky and how sensitive these new trucks are. Filtering them has never been more important. The newer the truck is, the more important that you have some sort of ultrafine filter to actually protect, even if there was no fuel economy increase, but to actually protect the entire motor, which we believe most motors fail from the top end down. So if you can clean up everything that goes into the top of the motor, typically the whole motor will live and last a lot longer. And by doing so, it's been proven that we can reduce the soot and the carbon drastically, which in turn reduces the amount of diesel exhaust fluid because you're doing less regens because you have less soot to burn. So
based on our DEF consumptions, we predict that we can take for example, an EGR that would typically fail and push it to about 3 times that normal life before it fails, just in the reduction of soot getting sent right back into the engine.
Yeah, I mean, this is all the way around, right? This system, the way that it's engineered in the fuel and the DEF and the soot that's going back in through the motor, it's just creating havoc in all these components. My brother's kind of solution that he's been running with for the last couple of years is, I don't know if you've heard of it, is the Pittsburgh Power treatment, the stuff that runs a couple hundred, 230, 240 a gallon, depending on where you buy it. And you put a couple ounces in each time you fill up. And he's noticed the same thing, right? He gets a little bit of a bump in fuel economy and he gets a little bit of a decrease in usage of DEF.
we've got a couple different customers of ours that actually are very proud of that exact product. And not that we've necessarily done in-house testing or anything. Most of our customers, unfortunately, are a little bit larger, or that's kind of who we target. And on a large scale, we've found that it's hard to rely on drivers to calculate the ounces needed based on what they fill. Not that the additives don't work. I think that if you can do both, you're really going to be in a good spot. Totally.
I mean, the ROI is just kind of lying around based on how problematic all these systems are without doing anything, right? Whether it's the cost of replacing engines, the wear and tear on the engines, the wear and tear on the DPF system. And that's not counting the fuel you save or the DEF that you don't have to buy, right? I mean, there's a lot of ROI here to get. And one way or the other, we got to get out of this trap of replacing engines every 500,000 miles, especially, they cost twice as much as they did 15, 20 years ago, and they last half as long.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a problem.
It's a serious problem. And we like to think we're part of the solution, and we've done a lot of testing. I think I told you at the show, Tony, part of what we do is regular analysis of fuel, as well as engine oil. We help a lot of customers understand what the life of their engine's really at and how it's performing. So it's something that we're passionate about, is helping these guys, especially owner ops and small, medium-sized companies. I mean, that's what our family does, right? So it's fun for us to help those guys out. Most of our customers are seeing a really good ROI year one. I think our average right now is what, Brad? Is it 5 to 1?
Usually for over the road trucks, about a 5 to 1 return year one. And then the years following, it's stupid. I mean, we're talking anywhere between 50 to 25 to 1 for over the road. The trucks that do anywhere from 50 to 60,000 miles a year, more local trucks, it's closer to like a 2 to 1 year one, but still a 10 to 15 to 1 every year after that. So, and that's just the return on immediate fuel and DEF savings. That doesn't include any of the real long-term savings of your motor should last longer. Instead of crapping out at 500,000, let's see if we can get this thing to 750 or 1 million. I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah, and the other components too, because you're cycling through those other systems significantly less, right?
Yep. And what we found too is there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between the engine manufacturers and the engineers that design the injectors. We've contacted injector manufacturers directly and picked the brains of their engineers to figure out what cleanliness levels they need fuel at. And then as soon as we get off the phone with them, we'll call Cummins or Detroit and ask them how clean the fuel needs to be. And they have two completely different answers. And in part, the injector manufacturers have such more advanced engineering than what is required by the World Fuel Charter. So that's part of it. But if everyone really dug in their owner's manuals and started reading and called these injector manufacturers and asked them how clean their fuel should be, I think they'd be really shocked that some of these huge corporations are putting such loose tolerance filters on their trucks.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the filters because we were emailing back and forth. My brother had some questions about filtration and cold weather applications for your system, knowing that he's based out of Minnesota, but runs up into Alberta quite a bit in the wintertime. But tell us your perspective on the cold weather applications and fuel filtration that you guys have tested out with your system.
Yeah, so we emailed a little bit back and forth about it. But one of our first actual bigger clients is located in Alberta, and most of their trucking is within Canada. They come in the States as well, but so tons of exposure there to really, 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 really cold climates. What we have found using some of inside information from our clients, but also just in-house testing, the number one cause of issues with gelling it really is just if there's water present at all. If there's water present in because most of these trucks have a water separator on them, and typically that is what causes the problem is there's water present, and most drivers, even owner operators, it's sad to say, but most people do not religiously drain the water out of the water separator. And every water separator, I mean, pretty much they come factory that way, have plugs on the bottom so that you can drain them. And the most manufacturers suggest you drain it daily. And I know for a fact that it never gets done. And so we've had people call us before saying, this thing's gelled, it's not starting or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's -20 and you're in a blizzard. How often have you been draining your water separator? And they're like, I don't even know how to do that. So I think the number one issue there is actually just water present. And the issue is that if you're not staying on top of that, when it does get to extreme climates and you shut the truck off for a period of time, things are just going to start freezing and gelling. Now, when people do take care of it and they're on the ball, like our customer in Canada, because they don't really come far enough south to put in fuel without heavy additives for the winter, they don't necessarily have any issues. And so we found that whether our height tolerant filter is on or not really doesn't make a difference whether the thing gels or not. It has much more to do with where they're picking up fuel and what kind of additives are in it and how often are they draining their water separator if they're running fuel that doesn't have any additives for the winter.
Yeah, my brother and I were talking about it on his truck, right? I haven't owned my own truck for probably 13, 14 years, but that period of 20 years that I did own trucks, the return, especially like on a Detroit engine, like a Series 60, the return, it was putting back so much warm fuel that as long as you didn't turn the truck off, your fuel temperature was going to stay high enough. It was a tough truck to gel up unless you had a water issue in the fuel. But now since they don't return nearly as much fuel as they used to, like my brother's newest truck, it has tank heaters
Mhm.
to keep that temperature up and kind of replace the function that returning that fuel did, especially up north. So as long as he's maintaining things like you said, you're probably not going to have any more problem than you would otherwise gelling up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's been our experience with it at least.
When we design our fuel system, we actually design them with a bypass valve. So if something was to gel up in our filter, just our filter, which has never happened, it's very easy to just flip the bypass valve and bypass the filter system. We would hate to hear about one of our customers getting stuck somewhere because it gelled up on them. So we put that in place, and most of our customers that run up north have that on. A lot of the guys down here in Arizona don't. It's an option. We like to put it on just in case, but yeah, there's certain unavoidables. There will pretty much always be water in your fuel. And you brought up a good point. The fuel that returns to the tank is warm. And in cold temperatures, that creates a lot of condensation
Mhm.
inside the tank. And that's where, a lot of the water actually gets in the fuel in the winter. Your engine block does the same thing. I mean, you get condensation on the inside of your block, and that's what really can start to kill your oil. So, not a lot of people recognize that. It's cool you did. I mean, that's something we try to educate our customers on as well. There's almost always going to be water in your fuel, so you really need to stay on top of your water separators. It makes a huge, huge difference.
Mhm.
I think a nice thing about that bypass valve is too is you can isolate the component out of the system and you can easily tell where you might, is this a water separator regular fuel filter problem or is it your product's problem? Well, it's easy. If you bypass your product and you still have the
No
problem,
problem.
that's not it.
And that's why I say, Tony, and that's what I said in the email too. Like, if our filter is gelled, uh, you're gonna need to change all your filters because we have had several customers call and say, "Hey, I think that my truck seems like it's struggling. It's starved for fuel. It might be getting gelled or whatever." Okay, bypass it. Yeah, still doing it. Okay, well, it could be gelled, but regardless, it's not because of the filter that we put on. Rather, it's just the nature of the beast. We always advise that all our customers take at least at all times one spare filter with them, so that they just got it on hand in the case that they absolutely need to swap it out. But
Oh
in
yeah, that's definitely something that should be in everybody's kit, right? A set of filters, either a jug of diesel or a siphon to get diesel out so you can fill it up, because you don't want to put a dry filter on there.
Yeah, it depends. Some trucks prime nicely, others don't. Depends on the engine manufacturer, and nobody wants to sit there and pump for 20 minutes in the cold.
Right.
Yeah, there's things that you hope these guys have on them at all times. And for us, we like to be more than just the guys who sell them a filter, but we really do try to be more of a consultant and follow up and see what their results are and see what's going well and what's not and help them improve. The more money they save, the happier they are. And it only benefits our business as well.
Yeah, and if you're gonna make the kind of investment to purchase systems like yours, you want to know why you're doing it, really why you're doing it, and how the entire system works, not just the part that you're buying and slap it on next to the other parts.
Exactly. And that's actually why, with all our customers, we will install a filter at no cost to the customer and run a test with them and show them how it works and let them see the benefits firsthand. We usually do an 11-mile loop somewhere around what the customer's going to drive speed wise, just normally, whether it's 62 or 78, whatever they set their cruise at. We'll do an 11-mile loop, take a before fuel economy average, and then we'll run that exact loop after we put a filter on, and we always see an increase. We've never had anybody say, never mind, get rid of it. So we want people to challenge us to an extent, I guess. But we love showing people how it works, and that's more important to us than just selling a system. We really try to educate them on this stuff, and people are super smart. I mean, a lot of these guys already know this, but the more we can help, the better.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I jump on other podcasts and other YouTube videos, and it's like I turned on the NASA channel or something. I'm like, what are these guys even talking about? Like, he's still talking about trucks. Like, what parts are those? And then the Australians are really into the details of their truck. Like, there's a couple Australian podcasts that I follow. And first of all, they throw you off because they got a bunch of weird words for stuff. But like the stuff these guys know about trucks, I just feel like, man, did I even never drive trucks? Like, I just feel like I don't know anything. The other thing too, I think that's important is like we were just talking about, I guess I always filled up my fuel filters because my dad would have hit me in the back of the head with a crescent wrench if I didn't. But that was also 35 years ago. Things change, right? But some of our habits don't. So, especially these new systems and stuff, it's good to get a refresher and or an update on what we know about how they work because stuff changes too.
Big time. It's true. One of the biggest things we've seen in terms of whether you want to call it tribal knowledge or old school trucking is people are religious about changing their engine oil. And I think I told you at the show, Tony, we have a truck with 200,000 miles on it on the same engine oil. And that engine oil is 7 times cleaner than brand new engine oil. You talk about the cost savings of that on the oil side, beyond just what we're saving repair wise on the bottom end of that motor. It's really incredible. But there's a lot of ingrained old school trucker in us, a lot of us, and that's a big offense to not change your engine oil. Uh, so you'll see manufacturers are pushing the boundaries already. A lot of these manufacturers are saying they can go 60 or more thousand miles without doing an oil change. That's what Detroit will tell you on a new DD15. So we like to push that even more and do it through science with data analysis and lab testing and consulting on the customer end. But that's one of those things that we've seen as far as like the old school habits that guys have and that we have too. That's one that kind of throws them for a loop. But when they can grasp it and we can help them, it saves these companies a lot of money.
What do you think the top end of that is? Like, how long could you theoretically run that oil?
So the manufacturer of these filters got his start in the big cargo ships that go across the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And when this all came about 15, 20 years ago, they put some of these exact same filters on it's a $32 million motor. Okay. And when they have to change their oil, there's nowhere to dispose of it. So it's a huge issue for these cargo ships. So they were very interested in obviously testing this product and seeing how it would do. It has been over 15 years and they have yet needed to change their oil. It's literally insane. It still seems crazy even to me.
Yeah, it does.
But now the other thing is with these cargo ships, they have full-time crews of engineers watching the motors. And on this ship, obviously, they filter the fuel as well. But when I tell somebody that, most people it's just so bizarre. But the reality is, if you can just control the quality of the oil and ensure that you're taking out any of the condensation that's occurring with every time the motor is turned on or off, there's just condensation. If you can pull that out as well as the contaminants within, you do two things. You can, one, prolong the life of that oil almost indefinitely. Now, if there's something else that goes awry with the motor, you might have to do an oil change. But for the most part, as long as the motor is in good standing, there's really not a need to change the oil. Now, we always say the only way you know is if you're analyzing. And we suggest third party, whether that's your local cat dealer or a local lab, somebody that, has a stamp of approval of saying whether or not the oil is good or not. So pretty remarkable, pretty crazy. It's all just from proper filtration. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good filtration. Yeah, it's wild to think. It just makes me want to go buy a truck right now and slap these systems on and see how it compares to just the average results of the same truck. I mean, let somebody else run the one without it to compare it to. I don't want that one.
Yeah, and that's been one thing that I'll call it a challenge for us. There's so many variables between one truck to the next, from tire size to rear ends to how the driver drives to the weight of the load or the amount of drag they're going through if there's a lot of wind. So to really get a real idea of fuel savings, it's very hard to nail down like a really good scientific test. A lot of the
Yeah.
time it comes down to a lot of these trucking companies have telematics systems, pretty much just a fancy OBD2 reader. And
Yeah.
it'll just tell you exactly what's going on in that motor. And we've seen quite remarkable results in our testing through the telematics system. It's hard to say, sometimes people come back to us and will give us a number that's so high. It's as much as it would benefit me that if it was true, I typically tell them there's a lot of variables. There's probably something else going on. I don't think it's that big of a difference, but we have seen results up to 20% fuel economy increase. So
Yeah.
huge amounts. Even for a one man owner op, if you're doing 100,000 miles a year, you're making your money back really quick and keeping more for you and your family, or for more chrome parts. I mean, whatever you want to do with your money.
Yeah, and if you're reducing DEF usage by 50% or something like that too, I mean, that's a significant cost as well.
Yeah. Yep. It's a lot of money. DEF's expensive, and um, yeah, we've seen a reduction of up to 50%. I'd say it's typically between 30 and 50%, but yeah, it's pretty steady there, close to the 50 mark on a handful of fleets that we work with and that give us reports. And we wish we could get more data, but these guys are really busy, and it's hard for them to sit down and map this all out when they're brokering their own loads and getting after it. So we understand that, but we really do like to work with the customer after the filter's installed and be there to support them along the way.
Yeah, I've got a couple of folks that I know. I mean, we're not friends, but we know of each other. I'm going to reach out to and see because they're fanatics about this stuff, right? These are the guys who are doing everything possible and monitoring. I mean, they've got programs on their laptops. They're monitoring everything because they're really trying to understand it and really trying to push the boundaries. Double digits, averaging 12, 13, getting 16, 17 miles per gallon on 53-foot vans and reefers with Volvo engines and Volvo trucks. So they're really trying to stretch the boundaries. It'll be interesting to hear their take on your guys' product and see if we can't get one of them to try it too and see what the results are. Because the data's it's got a lot of variables, but also somebody who's already fanatical about it has a good baseline to compare off of, right? Even though, yes, the wind's different today, the load, the weight's different today, the terrain's different today, but those guys have enough baseline understanding of their equipment that they'd be able to kind of root out some of the more common variables and kind of help just distill your data down to a really accurate degree.
Yeah, and that's an ideal customer for us because they can see the benefit really quickly. That would be awesome. Yeah, send them our way. I'd love to throw a filter system on and do some testing with them. And yeah, I mean, it's never ending for us. So we're always out doing stuff. We're going to a mine site tomorrow, doing some stationary equipment for them. We're really trying to expand, but the trucking industry is just what we know and what we're really familiar with. And so that's the area that we broke off into and have been pushing into pretty hard the last few months.
Yeah, well, awesome to meet you guys. I'm glad I ran into you at the truck show over there in Chandler, and awesome to get a chance to talk to you today. Why don't you let everybody know how they can find you?
Yeah. So you can just look us up. We got a website, pureflowsolutionsllc.com. We're also on social media. It's just Pureflow Solutions, and you can find us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll throw the link up there. I'll do a specific Facebook post to hit that crowd, and I'll throw it up on the website too, so everybody can find your solutions and reach out if they got more questions and go from there.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
Awesome, guys. It's Friday afternoon. It's about time to, well, you guys are going to a mine site, and I got a podcast to edit, so you guys, you guys have a great weekend, and we'll run into each other soon. I got to come swing up by your place.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah,
good,
we
man.
love that.
Thanks, guys.
Yep,
Yeah.
you betcha.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back. Quick reminder to pay a visit to our friends of the show on social media. Got Big Cal over at Big Cal's Kitchen. How you doing, Cal? Head over there, see what he's up to this week. Think he's heading to, where did he say he was going? Can't remember. I think he was in Ohio. Heading somewhere, Cal. Sorry. You've been so many places in the last week, I can't keep track of you, bud. We got Michelle, MJ Love Johnson on Facebook. I saw some of her adventures this week over at the Portland Zoo with her family. great videos and great pictures over there. Hope you had a fun time. Looks like you did. We've also got Truckers Against Trafficking. I shared a little post on Facebook. There's a great way, I posted about it on Facebook this week, but there's a great way to help Truckers Against Trafficking raise money this spring. The Truckers Network, TTN, is generously donating $10 for every new download of the TAT app, Truckers Against Trafficking, in March and the month of April. So go help them reach their goal of 2,500 downloads and help them raise some money for their mission. I hope you enjoyed the interviews this week with my little brother trucker and the guys over at Pureflow. Be sure to reach out if you'd like to be on the program. Message us on social media. Email us at inbox@channel19experience.com. There's also a contact form on the website. A few of you used it this week, so glad to know. Thank you for testing that and making sure it worked. So nominate your friends, nominate yourself. Hell, nominate your enemies. Put a total stranger's name in there. We'll talk to them. If you like what you're hearing, tell us. It's always great to get feedback. In an upcoming episode, I did hire a little consulting engagement with a podcast consultant, and a consulter. A consultant sounds more official. He probably charged more. So it was more of a consulter. So anyway, I got about 7 pages of feedback on the podcast. So it's time to review those. And I could tell by the first couple paragraphs, it's brutally honest. So we've got work to do. But you tell us what you think. If you like what you're hearing, let us know. If you disagree with us and want to debate something, send a message to your congressman. Just kidding. You can reach out to us. If you're really mad about something I said, message my brother. He's bigger and more spry than me. If you get through him, we can talk it out over the phone. Sorry, little brother. At some point here, like I mentioned before, we're going to try some different avenues like live streams and things like that. I'll do some testing on it in the coming weeks, probably this week at Matt's. So if you see a live stream notification pop up on your feed, you're not driving, you're looking for something to do, jump on, help us test it out. We won't record it and repeat anything we say because we don't know how all that works yet, but we'll get it figured out. So what's on the episode next week? I'll be honest, I don't know what's going to be on the episode next week. I'm going to be at Matt's over in Louisville. Get to see some old friends, get to meet some new ones, get to meet some folks who I've only talked to on the internet. We'll probably try to cut some interviews right there, do a little content from the show floor, share that out in the podcast or on social media. So let's call it a mystery episode next week. If you're going to be there over at Matt's, hit me up on Messenger or some way and we can shake hands. You can get a free air freshener. I've made a couple posts on social media about the Channel 19 air fresheners. There's a QR code on the back, so in case you forget how to find us, just follow your nose and then you'll find the QR code. And for sure on next week's episode, I've got to talk about the Channel 19 Experience encouragement cards, a little brainchild of mine from this past week to help spread joy in the trucker community. I think you're going to like where I'm going with this. Of course, like, follow, subscribe, post a nice review. Thank you for listening this week. I hope you enjoy the podcast. We'll see y'all next week. We've got work to do.